During his remarkable 21-year career, 20 with the Atlanta Braves, today's guest was one of the top starters and closers in baseball, becoming the only pitcher in history to record 200 wins and 150 saves. Since his career ended after the 2009 season, he has taken on two new roles as a broadcaster for MLB and TBS and the author of a new autobiography that is appropriately titled Starting and Closing. It's my pleasure to welcome back to the show, John Smoltz. And boy, do you have everything to be thankful for, grateful for, and proud of.
Yeah, it's been unbelievable. Since I ended, 2009 has been unbelievable.
You had your number retired in Atlanta, number 29.
Yeah, you never dream of that as a player. At least I never did. I didn't think that playing baseball in the major leagues would have a 20-year career plus, and then the fact that you get your number retired. The emotions that ranged that day were equivalent to pitching a doubleheader. I mean, I was exhausted at the end, but I had an incredible time seeing ex-teammates, obviously my manager, who I absolutely loved playing for,
Bobby Cox,
and of course the organization. It was just, it was really a great time. I got a chance to do an intimate setting with all my friends and family the night before and really get to thank them, because I could not imagine anybody having a bigger following than I did in my career, and I'm grateful for that.
Well, in 1987, there was a 19-year-old pitcher in the number 22 round draft choice. Yeah. How in the world did you get drafted?
You know, I often wonder about that. I've heard reasons. I signed really early to go to Michigan State. I was told you're going to be first through third round. And then I heard there was this drop-off in velocity from the start to the end of the game, which I didn't think happened. But I think it was more signability. You know, in those days, the draft was different. And going to college and the ability to sign a player who had the luxury of going to college was a little more difficult. And then maybe that had something to do with it. But at the end of the day, I had a great summer, waited till the last day you could sign, and actually signed for first-round money, the same kind of money that the Tigers' first-rounder got that year. John,
you were a huge Tiger fan growing up. And there's a story about you and your grandfather going to Tiger Stadium. Right. And you got a plot of turf from the infield and then brought it home and made kind of a little testament to the Tigers. Is that right?
What happened was in '84, my dad took me to the Tigers World Series, the one they clinched against San Diego.
Won it in 5 games.
Kirk Gibson hit the home run off of Goose Gossage. I could see Goose talking to Dick Williams. I could almost hear the conversation. I was that close. And after the game, the fans went nuts. They stormed the field. For whatever reason, they started ripping up the turf, and they started throwing the turf up in the stands. Well, it was right within our reach. My brother and I grabbed some, took it home, planted it in the backyard. My parents put a tiger statue kind of guarding the grass, if you will, and all was well until the day I got traded.
The day you got traded, the story is either your grandfather or your dad took it away.
My dad, I think.
Your dad?
The tiger statue, I don't know if it got destroyed or removed, but the grass got pulled up, and it was a tough time. I mean, honestly, for growing up there, my grandfather working on the ground crew, all the history with the Tigers, and just the days that I would grow up listening to them, and then for me to be traded, it was tough for my parents.
Bobby Cox has told me over the years that deal would not have been made. Doyle Alexander for you straight up, right? One for one. Doyle Alexander went on to do a great job with the Tigers. He was 9-0 that year. And the Tigers reached the postseason, were beaten by Minnesota, and you go to Atlanta to start a career that, I mean, you never dreamed about pitching in Atlanta, right?
No, I didn't know anything about the National League. I knew Dale Murphy, and that was it, and TBS. I didn't know anything else about the National League. I then realized in a quick week to 2 weeks what the opportunity was going to be like for me in this organization. They needed pitching. And I went, wow, what a great opportunity for me to get to the big leagues sooner than later. And then, of course, you lose 100 games 3 straight years. You don't know that you're ever going to win. You don't vision that it's going to turn around the way it did. And everything was just magical. It really was.
Everybody in the baseball world paid attention to John Smoltz and the Atlanta Braves in 1991. We'll be back to talk more with John right after this. In John Smoltz's excellent new book, he reveals that he's double jointed. Now listen to this. He's double jointed in every joint in his body. He writes, the fact that I could cock my elbow and shoulder back so far translated into my ability to throw a 98-mile-an-hour fastball. I had no idea.
Neither did I when I was playing the accordion at the age of 4 and 7.
And good, too.
I guess.
For 4 years you played it,
yeah,
right?
I always had loose joints, and so, flexibility was never a problem. I had internal and external rotation that probably scared most doctors.
Now what does that mean, internally?
Basically, I could take my arm and my hand and go farther back that way externally and this way for a shoulder and a joint and an elbow that typically would create problems for the stresses of throwing a baseball. I was lucky enough to persevere through it, tighten it up, but my shoulders would sublux. And what that means is
hypermobility.
Yeah, you would throw a pitch and it would keep going and it would come out of socket. And early in my career, I'd hang from the dugout to pop it back in. Luckily, I could still perform, but it was having its toll. And I was headed towards shoulder surgery. And I knew if I had shoulder surgery, based on what the doctor told me, my career would never be the same. And luckily, 20 years later, I had that shoulder surgery that was inevitable.
Was it after your shoulder surgery that you suggested to Bobby Cox to go to the bullpen?
No, it was after coming back from Tommy John surgery. And what happened was in 2000, I had Tommy John, and that was inevitable. I pitched with a torn ligament for a long time, and I figured I'd be
in the shoulder,
in my elbow,
in the elbow.
And the shoulder, I pitched for a long time with just. I didn't even want to know what was going on in there. But with the elbow, I had Tommy John and came back and developed such bad tendonitis that starting was not going to work. So I convinced Bobby to let me go to the minor leagues to just help the club down the stretch. He said, no, I'll wait for you to start. I said, Bobby, that's not going to happen this year. I went down to the minors. I worked on it, came up, and his quote, John, I don't know when I'm going to get you in, but I'll work you in. Like, he had no idea what I was going to do.
Well, he had no idea you were going to be a closer.
Right. And so I came in that first game in the ninth inning in a game well in hand. The place went nuts. I was throwing 98 miles an hour, struck out a couple guys or whatever happened, and everyone's eyes went, whoa. And I worked my way up from the fifth, sixth inning to eventually the last month was the closer, and I saved 10 out of 11 games. So there was two things going on in the offseason. They liked that. They liked the signability, and, of course, they felt it would make us a better ball club. So I really wasn't given an option. To stay there, it was going to be closing, and I did it for Bobby. I did it for the organization because I wanted to win a championship, and the rest was history.
The fact that you remained with the Atlanta Braves all those years instead of testing the market was, I think the people in Atlanta appreciated. And that's one of the reasons your number was retired.
Growing up Detroit and seeing all those guys play for one organization, Alan Trammell, Lou Whitaker,
Al Kaline.
I figured if I get a chance, and it takes two to make that work, I want to do what I can to stay there. I turned down a lot of money. As a matter of fact, a couple times to come here in New York. And I figured that for what I was able to do and who I wanted to do, I wanted to do it with Bobby. I mean, he was the best. And so I made it known. It hurt me a little bit in negotiations. But I wouldn't trade that again for anything in the world, because happiness is not exactly following the money. It's knowing where your place is and knowing how much fun you're going to have. And I didn't even talk to anybody that wouldn't let me play golf. So they could have offered me $200 million, and it wasn't going to happen.
By the way, John Smoltz is a +4 as a golfer, and we'll be back to talk about that and his life right after this.
Is ready. Here's his wind. Here's the 2-2 pitch. Strike three, swinging, number 3,000 in the wonderful career of John Smoltz. Brian McCann out to give him a hug. Here comes Chipper Jones. Here comes Janelle Escobar. And here comes the love of about 25,000 Braves fans here at Turner Field. They throw the ball out, of course. That'll probably go to the Hall of Fame.
Well, guess who else is going to the Hall of Fame? John Smoltz. 3,000 strikeouts for a guy with over 150 saves is remarkable.
Yeah, and you miss 5 years of starting when I went to that and the injury, and And at that point in my career, I knew there was a countdown coming, and they had kept track, but I was more concerned about my shoulder. I knew what was coming in my shoulder. Unfortunately, I only got a couple more games left after that, which was, again, a tribute to persevering and pushing through that, but I ended up having that surgery that I talked about earlier that we tried to avoid. But it was that night, I didn't realize how big a deal this was. I mean, only 16 people in the history of the game have reached 3,000.
That's right.
I was so consumed about something else that I didn't even pay attention to that stuff.
Did you know, leading up to that there were 15 guys right there? I guess you had to. Oh, you didn't?
No, I had no
idea.
idea.
You didn't?
No.
Well,
I just
there
assumed.
are some guys who are just oblivious to statistics.
Yeah. For all that I was going through, I never really even thought about it for a minute. I went to the park as if it was another game. Everybody was anticipating this strikeout. And then when it happened, it just like time stopped. And I literally wanted to get back to pitching. It was neat. I never had a situation where teammates are hugging you on the field and the game's still going. Ironically, I think I struck out 10 that game and was losing 1-0 in the 8th inning. I ended up losing that game.
That was a splitter on which you got your 3,000th. The next year, you left the Braves after 20 years of work. That was 2008. In 2009, you end up starting the season with the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah, no, like we said, I went and had that surgery. There's really no reason for me to come back. That was going to be, I had 9 staples, anchors in my shoulder, and it would have been much easier if I retired. But I wanted to, you know what, I'm one of those guys that's not afraid of the challenge, and I wanted to get back on my own terms and leave on my own terms. And I was hoping it would be with Atlanta. And that's the toughest call that a manager and a general manager has to make, is an aging veteran, a guy who's been there. Can he come back? Can he help us? The odds were stacked against me. Boston saw to it and saw me throw it 5 months and really said that, we're willing to take the chance. And they did. And I think the disappointment for me was how it was left with the Braves. I'll always be a Brave, forever be a Brave. Obviously, my number got retired. But it was conveyed in a way that kind of made me look like I left for more money, which was totally not true. And it was a tough departure because I was willing to move on and go and try this with Boston, which didn't work. Didn't work as well as I would like to. Landed in St. Louis. It ended fantastic for me to end my career in St. Louis, even though I wanted to end it in Atlanta.
It's a very difficult thing when an organization preaches to you from the time you sign, or in your case, from the time you were traded, and they get you and they talk about family. And now all of a sudden, when they're pushing you aside, there's no more family.
No.
And that's why the toughest thing in the world is that first trade. That's so emotional.
Yeah, exactly. And I understand it. Looking back now and seeing 3 years removed, I get it. I get the fact that if we were to part ways, it could have been done maybe on both parties, handled a little bit differently. But, as I look back in my career, I got a chance to see 2 other historic organizations. As much as I knew that it wasn't going to work with the Braves, my passion to pitch was still there. I made some rookie mistakes in Boston and anxiety. When you go somewhere else, it's really difficult to make an imprint fast.
You have said, and you said it in the book, that that was the first time you were nervous on the mound.
I'll tell you something. I was in Washington, which I've been a bunch of times, pitching against the Nationals. I did not know where to put my legs with the bases loaded. I had an out-of-body experience. Veritek came out to the mound and says, "I'm just giving you a breather." I said, "Tech, I do not know where to put my right leg." I mean, I was in a stance that I had never been in before. After I got through that, I pitched fine, but it was wild to think 20-plus years in the big leagues and that happened. And ironically, my last game that I ever pitched, I felt something that I'd never felt before, and obviously a lot of other people felt. I had butterflies. I felt nervous in a playoff game I'd never felt before, had no saliva, and I had to step back on the mound and talk myself into, you've been here before. You've done this. This was my 15th postseason. I ended up doing really good, but it was amazing how the whole thing flashed before me, and I saw my career kind of ending, and this could be it, and the emotions were kind of incredible.
When the Atlanta Braves retired John Smoltz as number 29, Bobby Cox said he was the biggest of the big game pitchers. That alliance with Bobby Cox was very special for John. I'll be back with Smoltz right after this. John Smoltz, the biggest of the big game pitchers, and you had two other big game pitchers in your group also, Greg Maddux and Tommy Glavine, but it was you that always started game one. It was you that always started game seven. These guys could have started games 1 or 7, and they would have been a terrific choice. Did you ever talk to them about that?
No, it was interesting. When we go in Bobby's office early in that campaign, starting the playoffs, he goes, we could start any one of you. It's just a number, and we can go here, we can go there. And deep down, I'm like, no, there's only one choice. I want to be the guy. I respected those two so much and what they did. And they knew that kind of what I always wanted to do and the stuff that I had and all those things. But it was a product of timing. The ability to pitch game sevens, certain things have to happen. The ability to pitch those games, certain things have to happen. And I was lucky to be
game 7 has to happen.
Right. And I was
everything
lucky
leading up to that.
Be in those positions, and I thrived in it. I loved it. It's what I wanted when I was a kid. And you'd be surprised. I mean, how many guys don't want that, And over the time frame of being the hero and the GOAT, you just want to be the hero. Most guys, they don't want to be the GOAT. And certainly I had the unbelievable ability to pitch in 3 seventh games, which is remarkable.
You convey that in the book by talking about the brick wall.
Yeah.
And you're back when you were a kid, right?
Yeah.
You were throwing against the brick wall.
I tell people all the time, I pitched in 107th games. I had an imagination as a kid that would just be right in the moment. And I would make the pitch, and I went 99-1 in those 100 games because no one would believe 100-0. I just really believed it. When I lived that moment, it was like reliving a childhood dream. At 7, 8, 9, 10, pitching. I can still see myself pitching on this curb because my parents didn't want me in the street. With a rubber ball and tape on a brick wall with all the strike zone and then the quadrants that I wanted to hit. Every once in a while I hit that screen door and I'd hear my mom yell, but that was the wild pitch.
There was one time, I think, when you were a closer that you've talked about looking at the plate and seeing lanes of the plate that you had never seen before. What exactly did you mean by that?
Well, what happens, for me is a starter, you get through the whole type of the game. You're seeing hitters, setting up hitters. And as a closer, I wanted to get more like in a tunnel. You get more in that adrenaline tunnel, and you got to get 3 outs. And I literally, as I pitched through those injuries and as I learned my body, I learned the mechanics that I wish I'd have learned a long time ago. And I really learned to set apart the hitter from the plate and see the plate in ways that I'd never seen it before. And I just really,
and you never picked that up until you were a closer.
Yeah, I think you get into that really hyper focus. When the pressure's on, I wish I could have approached every game like a playoff game. But this is what I know: if I'd have got to the end of the season pitching every game like a playoff game, there's no way I could have pitched in the playoffs. I'd have been. I mean, to me, the season was like a battle. You make it through the battle, and then when you get to the postseason, you pitch like there's no tomorrow. And I never approached a game as if I would pitch again. So. For me, the postseason was always every inning I pitched was like 3 innings in a regular season, effort-wise. And I think that's the reason why I was able to do what I did, but never dreaming it would be 14 years in a row.
You may or may not know this, but John Smoltz holds the St. Louis Cardinals record for most consecutive strikeouts, 7, and he did that in 2009. Talk about realistically what you want to do and your expectations about your golf game. You're a +4 right now, right?
Yeah, anywhere from +2 to +4. Those handicap systems are crazy. But I want to take it to the next level. I want to try to play and see if I can get in an event at the senior tour level or the Champions Tour. And it's a goal of mine, passion of mine. And much like everything else I've done in my life, I've had a major failure that I've learned from. And I did this in golf in a previous tournament in the Nationwide, which blew up in my face, but I became a better golfer from it. And that's really what the book has been about my failures in life have made me think about things in ways that will make me better. Golf, there's no greater pressure I've ever been in baseball. There's going to be some incredible pressure in golf that's all about me, and I just want to see how far I can take it.
I have heard that you're going to try to play in the U.S. Open next year.
I like to qualify just for the experience. I did it the past year. I missed by a stroke like everybody does. At one point, you miss by that much. I just like those experiences to know what it teaches you. I mean, people don't experience, they don't go outside their comfort zone because they're comfortable. When you get outside your comfort zone, you get stretched. You learn things. It either causes you to go away from something or towards something, and I like going towards something. And I learned so much by qualifying with other great players. And, look, again, why not? Why not until you figure out, okay, I wasn't good enough in 4 years.
I have every reason to believe that what is in your book was just a small part of what is in this show today. It's
Yes.
fascinating stuff, John. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
John Smoltz has been my guest. Fascinating stuff. I'm Tim McCarver. Thanks for watching.